The blizzard arrived earlier than expected. Snow swallowed the streets, the wind bent the trees, and the power lines moaned under the weight of ice. My parents decided to go to the Christmas Eve service anyway. It's only a short drive, Dad had said. We'll be back before 10. It was 7:42 p.m. when they left. It was 8:15 p.m. when the storm trapped us. Just me, 13-year-old Evan, and my older brother Daniel. The house felt too big without our parents. Shadows stretched longer. Corners seemed darker. Even the sound of the wind felt unnatural, like it wasn't searching for a way in, but calling from outside. We were halfway through a Christmas movie when everything went black. The power died. The TV popped, the lights flickered out, silence filled the house like water filling a sinking ship. Great, Daniel grumbled, grabbing a candle. Blizzard finally got the lines. But he looked uneasy. We both did. The candle's flame shook even though the air was still. Then we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A soft knocking. 3 knocks, slow, spaced out. It came from the front porch. We froze, listening. Tap, tap, tap. Daniel exhaled. Probably a branch. But his voice lacked confidence. He stood, walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. The porch was empty except for swirling snow. He opened the door a crack. A blast of freezing wind hit us. It howled, clawed at the doorway, screamed into the house. But the porch was empty. No footprints except ours from earlier. Daniel shut the door, locked it. For good measure, he slid the deadbolt. We returned to the living room. Not even 10 minutes passed before another sound came. Not knocking, not tapping. This time, it was scratching, slow, deliberate scratching at the back door. We stared at each other. "That's not the wind," I whispered. Daniel swallowed. "Stay here." Of course I didn't. We crept into the kitchen. The back door had a frosted glass window. Through the ice-fogged glass we could see something moving. A shadow, tall, still, breathing. Daniel raised the flashlight. The beam cut through the frost and revealed something that made my chest tighten. Handprints, dozens of them. Some small like a child's, some large, all pressed against the glass as if they were trying to push their way inside. Cold, wet, human handprints. And then, tap, 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 right next to Daniel's face. He stumbled back. The candle flickered wildly. "No one could get here in this storm," he muttered. Before I could answer, a new sound broke through the house. A loud thump from upstairs. We looked up. Another thump. Dragging footsteps. Something was in the attic. The problem was, neither of us had heard the attic door open, and it always made noise. Squeaky metal hinges, impossible to miss. Yet someone was walking above us. Daniel whispered, "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, don't get close to the attic." We moved toward the hallway. The house creaked under the weight of snow. The candle flame stretched sideways as if pulled by something invisible. We reached the attic door. It was open. Barely an inch. Just enough for blackness to spill out like a thick shadow. A cold breeze drifted down, colder than the blizzard outside. Then the steps creaked. 1, 2, 3. Something was climbing down. A hand appeared first. Grey skin. Too thin. Knuckles sharp like bones, pressing through paper. Nails long, yellow, curved. I choked on a scream. Daniel swung the flashlight up. The beam caught the hand. It jerked back instantly, vanishing into the darkness above. The attic stairs slammed upward, the door snapping shut as if pulled by something with impossible strength. Silence. Then, tap, 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 at the front door again. We didn't wait. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Garage, now!" We sprinted, slipping on the hardwood floor. The whole house seemed alive, wood groaning, air tightening, shadows crawling. In the garage, we pulled on our boots with shaking hands, didn't tie them, didn't zip our jackets. We just ran. We burst into the storm, snow stinging our faces. The cold bit into my lungs like knives. "Help!" Daniel screamed at the road. The world was pure white, snow roaring sideways, but a snowplow appeared through the fog like a yellow ghost. The driver hit the brakes. "What the hell are you two doing out here? You'll freeze!" We climbed in, both of us shaking uncontrollably. "We're not going back," I whispered. We didn't tell him the full story. We didn't need to. Our pale faces told enough. When our parents returned and found the house empty, they panicked. When the police arrived and we explained everything, they searched the house thoroughly. The attic had nothing unusual, except for the footprints. Not human, not animal. Long, thin, sharp at the ends, like whatever had climbed down had been walking on the tips of its toes. They told us it was old tracks, though the attic floor hadn't been touched in years. We moved within a month, but every Christmas Eve, at some point during the night, horror stories. We always bought our Christmas tree from a small farm outside Pine Creek, North Carolina, a quiet, lonely place far from town. The owner, Mr. Borden, was an elderly man with sunken eyes and a voice that shook like dry leaves. Every December, without fail, he gave the same warning. Open, quote, "Don't leave the tree by a window at night. They see light differently, they hear differently, and sometimes they follow it." Close quote. He would look toward the dark forest behind his farm as if expecting something to emerge. Everyone thought he was just old and strange. But in 2015, I learned he wasn't crazy at all. The tree we should never have taken. December 1st, 2015. Snow dusted the fields as my family walked between rows of Christmas trees. My mom stopped at a tall, dark pine, one with a strange twist running through its trunk. "Looks alive," she joked. Dad inspected it. Strong branches, perfect height. I felt uneasy just standing next to it. Something about the tree felt wrong, like it was leaning toward us even though the wind was still. But no one listened to me. Mr. Borden approached silently, startling us. "You picked that one?" he asked softly. Dad nodded. "Great shape." Mr. Borden placed a trembling hand on the tree. "You should choose another. This one listens too well." Mom laughed it off. "It's just a tree." Mr. Borden whispered something as he tied it to our roof. His lips moved fast, like he was praying. I should have paid attention to the fear in his eyes. The first night. We set the tree in the living room corner, decorated it with golden lights and glass ornaments. It looked beautiful. I stood back and took a picture of it. The tree didn't look twisted anymore. It looked straight, perfect, as if it was posing. That night, during a movie, I noticed something odd. The tree wasn't in the exact corner anymore. It leaned half a foot toward the center of the room. "Dad, did you move it?" He didn't look away from the TV. Didn't touch it. Mom said, "Must have settled." I tried to believe that, but the pit in my stomach didn't go away. The tree moves at 1:13 a.m. I woke up thirsty. Walking to the kitchen, I passed the living room. Something made me stop. The Christmas tree was no longer near the corner. It stood in front of the window, directly in front of it, like it was looking outside. My heart beat so fast I felt dizzy. "Dad?" I whispered. No answer. The house was asleep. I took one slow step backward. The tree remained still, branches frozen in mid-reach. I flicked the light switch, and the tree was suddenly back in the corner, exactly where it had been. My breath caught in my throat. I turned the light off, turned it on again. The tree didn't move this time. I left the room, shaking. Night 2. The second night is when the fear became real. Around midnight I heard a sound, a soft, muffled shuffle, branches brushing the floor. I peeked out my door. The living room was glowing faintly from the tree lights. I walked closer and froze. The tree was standing in the middle of the room, not by the corner, not by the window, dead center, standing like a person waiting to be noticed. But worse than that, there was something inside the branches. A shape, curled, flesh-colored, something breathing. My scream cut through the house. Mom and Dad ran downstairs. Dad grabbed the tree and shook it violently. Ornaments shattered across the floor. Then something dropped out. A pale, curled object the size of a cat. Skin like damp clay. Black, wet eyes. It hissed and scuttled underneath the couch, moving impossibly fast. Mom screamed. Dad jumped back. "What was that?" Mom cried. Dad didn't have an answer. He called pest control. They arrived early the next morning. The man examined the needles scattered around. "This isn't from any animal I've seen," he whispered. "This looks like something peeled." Then he found something that made him go silent. A patch of skin, thin, translucent, shaped like a human face, but stretched, molted, as if something had grown inside the tree and outgrew its skin. The word written in needles. That night, scratching sounds echoed through the vents, long, slow scratches, moving from room to room. Around 4 a.m., a loud thump shook the house. We ran downstairs. The Christmas tree had fallen over, needles scattered everywhere, lights flickering, ornaments cracked. But then I noticed something chilling. The needles on the floor were arranged, spelling a word, "Stay." Mom backed away. "We're leaving." But as we turned toward the door, the fallen tree twitched, just slightly, just enough to prove it wasn't done with us. Dad grabbed the base. "Outside. Now." We dragged it into the yard. Snow fell heavily, but Dad struck a match. The tree caught fire faster than any fresh pine ever should have. The smoke was black, oily and foul, like burning hair and wet soil mixed. Mom gagged. It smells rotten. As it burned, something screamed from inside. Not human, not animal, something else. We didn't stay to watch it finish burning. Mr. Borden's final warning. The next afternoon, a truck rolled into our driveway. Mr. Borden stepped out. He looked even older, his face pale. "You burned it," he said softly. Dad nodded. "What was inside that thing?" Borden sighed. "Not everything in the forest stays in the forest. Some trees grow hollow, some grow hungry, and some grow inhabited." Mom whispered, "Inhabited by what?" He shook his head. "By something that chooses trees the way we choose homes." We stared at him in horror. He looked out at the smoking stump. "They don't like being near windows. They see things out there, they call to them." His voice dropped lower, and once they move, they don't stop. He refused to sell trees after that year. The farm closed weeks later. And even now, every Christmas since then, something strange happens. A pine needle appears inside our house. Just one, left in impossible places. My bed, the shower, my shoe, always on December 1st, always pointing toward the window. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Vermont, the kind where everyone decorated their houses for Christmas. Lights on every porch, wreaths on every door, and every year the same tradition, Christmas Eve carolers. A group of local teenagers, about 8 or 10 of them, would walk house to house singing classic holiday songs. We always looked forward to hearing them. But in 2019, the carolers who came to our house were not from our town, and they weren't human. The first song. It was 8:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. My mom was making hot cocoa, Dad was arranging gifts under the tree, and I was scrolling my phone when we heard it. Soft singing. Distant at first. Growing closer. Dad smiled. Carolers, right on time. But something about the sound felt off. The melody was right, the rhythm was right, but the voices were wrong, too smooth, too even, almost metallic, like a recording played through broken speakers. We peeked through the curtains. A group of carolers stood at the end of our driveway. They wore old-fashioned winter clothes, thick cloaks, tall hats, dresses with wide skirts. Their outfits looked like something from the 1800s. Snow covered their shoulders, yet none of them shivered. They simply stood there singing. But something bothered me. None of them seemed to be breathing, not a single exhale in the freezing air. "Maybe they're wearing masks," Mom said, trying to rationalize it. But that didn't explain the lack of breath, or why they hadn't moved an inch. They come closer. The carolers finished the first song. Then, in perfect unison, too perfect, they took a single synchronized step forward. Crunch. Their boots sank into the snow like one creature with 8 legs. They began the second song, this time louder, closer, too close. Mom frowned. They're not usually this intense. Dad stepped outside onto the porch. "Beautiful singing. You kids from the church?" The carolers didn't answer. They just stopped singing, instantly, every voice cutting off like someone hit a switch. Then they all turned their heads toward him, in absolute silence. Dad froze. Mom whispered, "What's wrong?" When Dad stepped back inside, his face was drained of color. I don't think they have faces. The faceless carolers. We all pushed against the window again. The carolers stood perfectly still, and Dad was right. Their faces were smooth. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just pale, featureless skin stretched tight over skulls. Yet somehow, the shapes of expressions were still there. One looked like it was smiling. Another looked angry. One tilted its head, curious. Their heads twitched slightly, like they were listening for something beneath the snow. I whispered, "They're not singing anymore." Dad swallowed. "Then why can I still hear them?" And that's when we realized the singing was coming from the backyard. Another group. More voices, more footsteps. Surrounding the house. No escape. Dad locked every door. Mom shut the curtains. But the singing grew louder. The voices multiplied. Some high-pitched like children. Some deep like old men. All horribly perfect. All wrong. I peered through the back window. Another group of faceless carolers stood there. Their heads snapped upward the moment I looked out. I fell back, screaming. Mom covered my mouth. "Don't let them hear you." But it was too late. They had already stopped singing. The knock, one slow knock, came from the front door. Knock, not a normal knock. Hollow, wet, as if knuckles were made of wood, not bone. The second knock came from the back door. Knock, then the windows. Tap, 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 tap. Every window in the house. Dozens of fingers gently tapping the glass, testing it. Dad grabbed his phone. No signal. He grabbed a kitchen knife, hands shaking. "They'll go away," Mom whispered. "It's a Christmas prank. Has to be." But even she didn't believe her own words. The front door knob turned. Once. Twice. Slowly. Then it rattled violently as if something was trying to tear it off. The singing started again, but now the voices were inside the walls, humming, vibrating the wood, shaking the picture frames. It felt like we were trapped inside a giant throat, listening to it groan. The window cracks. One window cracked. Just a small line at first. Then another. And another, like frost forming in reverse. The faceless caroller outside tilted its head again, pressing both hands against the glass. The skin on its fingers stretched thin until it tore, revealing pale, bony branches instead of bones. Mom screamed silently, tears dripping down her chin. Dad raised the knife. Upstairs. Now! We ran to the second floor and locked ourselves inside the master bedroom. Dad pushed a dresser against the door. The singing below us grew louder, vibrating the floorboards. But then we heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming up the stairs. The faceless carolers had found a way inside. The final song. Their singing turned into a distorted melody, a Christmas carol twisted beyond recognition, the notes bent like metal under pressure. They stopped outside our bedroom door. We heard them breathing now, slow, deep breaths, like lungs inflating for the very first time. Then, a whisper. Not from one voice, from all of them at once. Open quote, "Let us in," close quote. Dad tightened his grip on the knife. Mom clutched my arm so hard the blood stopped flowing. The doorknob turned. The dresser slid an inch. Then another. We braced ourselves, but then everything stopped. The singing, the breathing, the knocking, silence. We stayed awake until morning, shaking in fear. When the sun finally rose, Dad moved the dresser. The hallway was empty. Downstairs, the doors were still locked, but the snow outside, the snow was covered in footprints. Hundreds of them, leading to our house, and leading away. But the footprints that led away were far too large. As though whatever left our house was no longer the same size as what had arrived. Years later, every Christmas Eve since then, no carolers come to our neighborhood. Everyone stays inside. But around 8:47 p.m. without fail, somewhere far away, soft singing begins. Perfect. Too perfect, like something searching for another home. The house on Frostwood Lane had become a battlefield of shadows. Snow hammered the windows like bony fingers. Mira crouched behind the Christmas tree, clutching her brother's teddy bear, the same toy the Shadow Man had touched only minutes before. Footsteps echoed across the wooden floor, slow, sharp, echoing like claws. The lights flickered again, not from electricity, but from him. The Shadow Man emerged from the hallway, taller than before, stretching like smoke, searching for a way to enter her fear. "Give him back," the creature whispered, its voice like cold wind through broken glass. Mira pushed the teddy bear forward, but the Shadow Man shook its head. "I don't want the toy. I want the warmth behind it." It lunged. Mira screamed and threw the bear toward the fireplace. Flames rose. The Shadow Man shrieked, pulling away, its shape deforming, melting into darkness. Then, a sudden blaze as the teddy bear caught fire. The Shadow Man dissolved instantly, ripped apart by the burning memory of love. The lights returned. Mira cried in relief, but behind her, a small soot-black handprint appeared on the wall. 2. The Snowfall Hunter, finale of Story 2. Adam and his friends sprinted toward the abandoned ski lodge, lungs freezing with every breath. Behind them, heavy footsteps crunched through deep snow, far louder than human. The Snowfall Hunter was close. They slammed the lodge door shut and pushed a wooden cabinet against it. Silence. No breath. No footsteps outside. For a moment they thought they were safe. Then a massive claw pierced through the wooden door. Then another. And another. The creature wasn't trying to open it. It was tearing the building apart. Snow blew inward. A monstrous figure towered in the doorway, its face hidden behind a mask of frozen bone. Its eyes, two white, empty circles, locked onto them. Adam grabbed a flare gun from the emergency kit. "Run!" he yelled, firing. The flare hit the creature's chest and ignited like a burning fist of light. Flames danced across its icy skin. The Snowfall Hunter roared in agony. It crumbled, melting into steaming puddles on the wooden floor. But as the last ice chunk dissolved, the puddles started to move, crawling, freezing, reforming. Adam stared in horror. The hunter was rebuilding itself. He fired the last flare at the roof, causing an avalanche of old snow stored in the rafters to collapse over the creature. The ice trapped it, not dead, only contained. Adam whispered, "It wakes every winter. We have to warn people." Outside, heavy snowfall began, thicker than ever. Nash 3, the Santa in the camera, finale of Story 3. Nora and her younger sister Emma huddled in their living room, re-watching the horrifying footage on Nora's phone. There he was, the man dressed as Santa, standing behind Emma's bed at 3:11 a.m., smiling, motionless, breathing. They had called the police. They were minutes away. But then the power shut off. The house fell into blackness. A voice whispered through the vents, "Who? Who's still awake on Christmas Eve?" Nora froze. Emma clamped a hand over her own mouth to stop screaming. Something crawled inside the ventilation shafts. Slow, deliberate, metallic banging. Nora grabbed a kitchen knife and pulled Emma into the bathroom. She locked the door. The banging moved along the shaft, stopping right above them. And then the vent grill slid open. A pale hand reached down. Nora struck upward with the knife. A howl of pain echoed through the ducts. The creature, the man, fell partially through the vent opening, his mask tilted, revealing a twisted human face and wild eyes. "Found you," he hissed. Before he could drop down fully, police sirens flashed through the window. He scrambled through the vent like a terrified animal. Officers stormed the house. Minutes later, they pulled the deranged man out from the backyard shed. He wore a Santa suit drenched in sweat, dirt, and something darker. Nora and Emma were safe. But the police later discovered dozens of similar videos on his phone, children sleeping, being watched, and the last video, recorded that same night. It ended with the words, "Next Christmas, I return." Nafor, the Christmas tree that breathed, finale of Story 4. The Wilson family's Christmas tree lay knocked over, ornaments shattered across the floor. But the true horror was the trunk. It pulsed, breathing like a living chest. A wet crackling sound came from inside the bark. "Get behind me," Mr. Wilson said, holding a fire iron. Suddenly, the tree's branches whipped outward like claws. Needles shot across the room like tiny sharp darts. Mrs. Wilson screamed as a branch wrapped around her ankle, dragging her toward the trunk. Mr. Wilson struck the branch with the iron, freeing her. But the tree wasn't just alive. It was hungry. A massive split opened along the center, like a mouth made of wooden ribs. Inside, darkness, pulsing like something breathing in the deep forest. The tree lunged. The family ran to the kitchen. Mr. Wilson grabbed a bottle of cooking oil and threw it over the tree as it pursued them, branches scraping across tiles. "Light it," he shouted. Mrs. Wilson flicked a lighter. The tree erupted in flames, thrashing wildly, slamming into walls, leaving burning marks everywhere. But it burned and burned, until it finally collapsed, nothing but smoking splinters. The family stared at the charred remains. Deep within the ashes, they found human teeth embedded in the wood, as if the tree had once been someone. Outside in the yard, the other pine trees swayed gently in the wind, too gently, too synchronized, too alive.